Hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Amy Grimshaw. I look after PR and comms for Founders Factory. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Ning Li, the e-commerce pioneer responsible for Made.com and Typology, two of Europe's most coveted online brands. A little bit of background on Ning, if you don't mind. Ning, you were born in China, did you know?
I was.
You arrived in France at the age of 16, couldn't speak the language, financed his studies, working in a pastry shop in Chinatown in Paris, and graduated from the prestigious HT Paris Business School. And then you launched an innovative interiors brand called MyFab before relocating to the UK to launch Made.com, working very closely with our very own Brent Haberman. Ning spent 7 years at the helm of Made.com, which the Sunday Times said has transformed the way we buy furniture. And now has a revenue of what, around 200 million, something like that? Can you tell us?
It's around 400 now, yes.
Oh wow. Well so after stepping down from his role at the CEO at Made.com, Ning moved back to Paris, and a little bit of time out of the spotlight, he's back on the scene in 2019 to launch Typology. So for those who don't know, Typology is a wonderful brand manufactured in France, vegan, ethically sourced, affordable beauty products that fit through your letterbox. I'm a big fan. And Vogue dubbed Typology last year the skincare brand to know in 2020. And to top that all off, you used to be my boss, Ning, at Maze.
We did, yes. I miss that period very much.
So welcome, Ning. Thank you so much for joining us.
So good to talk to you guys here.
Right. So it's going to be 40, 45 minutes of chat and then questions from the floor. So if anybody has questions, just pop them into the chat and I'll come to them at the end. Okay. So, okay, Ning, so it would be silly if we didn't start 10 years ago at the launch of Made.com. So you've moved from Paris, you're in London, you're about to launch a furniture brand. Why furniture? How did that come about?
Yes, there are a couple of reasons, but I think there's this official story and there's a real story. So which one would you like to hear?
We've got lots of founders on the call, so lots of realness, please. The real story.
So, okay, so there are two sides of the story. So the first thing is I was running a company that was called MyFab, as you mentioned, in Paris, which was sold to a French retail group called PPR, the Pinot Group. And that company was a flash sale retail company. So we sourced product in stock, and then we try to sell it on a database, email database, to hundreds of thousands of people within like 3 to 7 days. And so we sold like anything, bikes, t-shirts, and cushions, and even some furnitures. And the category that works actually the best was decoration and furniture. So that gave me confidence, bearing in mind that that's 2008, 2010, very early age, of the furniture online sales. It gave me insight and confidence that it actually can be sold online, high ticket items, and 500, 1,000 pounds purchases with brands that you don't know, you can be sold online. And but the trigger was, when I moved, so I cashed out from my first venture, so I had a bit of money and I wanted to buy something for a nice flat. So the first thing is I buy a flat. The second thing is I have to furnish the flat, but when you furnish the flat, you actually have to buy furniture, which is something new to me at the time. And I set my eyes on a nice piece of couch that was about 3,000 euros. Fair enough. There was it's an expensive price, but affordable. But still, just before I was about to buy it, I showed a picture of the sofa to a friend of mine who actually grew up with me in China. You mentioned that I was born there, so I kept some connections there. And my friend actually happened to take coach to continue to working and taking over his parents' sofa factory. And I thought he was the expert of sofa, so I wanted his advice. And he told me, "Wait a moment, I know that sofa. We made it, And so out of curiosity, I say, "Okay, wow, how much were you selling that for?" And he told me a price. I can't remember exactly the figure, but I fell off my chair. It's something like $200 or something. Something that was selling for 3,000 pounds. And which is no sense. So obviously I bought the sofa from him, but I thought maybe there are people out there just like me that wanted, nice, high, good quality design, well-designed, well-made furniture, but don't really want to spend, this kind of huge budget to buy through the high street stores, that buy through importers and distributors and various middlemen. And so internet happens to be a good gateway to bridge the demand between the manufacturer and consumers. So Made.com was born really, and initially was Made.com because everything was made to order. You place the order with us, and we place the order with the manufacturers, and then you have to wait a little bit to get your order. So that's the origin of how I came to London.
It's a different challenge, isn't it? Shipping a moisturizer than shipping a sofa, I'm sure.
Very different, very different.
So obviously, you just talked about the revenues that Made's seen now. It's grown incredibly fast. And, I remember when I was there, I think you were hiring, how many people a week? 7 people a week or something insane like that. Scaling up is fraught with issues for founders. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when we were really growing fast?
Yeah. So when I look back, and it does happen to me sometimes, because I like to compare the revenue of Made.com and the beginning with Typology to see whether I'm growing faster or slower than before. So when I look back, actually, I realized the growth has been really incremental. There wasn't really a moment where you say, oh, this day we changed the business. No, it didn't happen like that. It didn't happen overnight, but it happened in the speed of around 10 to 20% growth every month. So when you compound that for 10 years, it became a huge business. And I think the way but there were a few key phases in the kind of 10-year journey. I think in the very beginning, obviously we were, there was not really a very distinct, very clear separation of jobs between the co-founders. I had 2 co-founders, as you know, and at some point, the first pain point was when we had to hire external professional people in, senior management here into the company. And that's when we have to look into bigger companies, obviously, because we want people that have scaled before in other companies that can help us grow the business further. And because I was such a young founder then, I think I had a fascination for people that have worked in big businesses. So I thought, we were in consumer business. We want to hire someone from the biggest consumer group, P&G, right? To hire, the consumer marketing expert. So we hired this, I don't know whether you have worked with him, but we hired this marketing director that had worked 15 years at P&G.
Yeah.
And super well-rounded CV, presented super well. And we used a very expensive headhunter to get him on board. And I was thrilled. I was so impatient and excited to work. I thought, with this person, we can transform the company and take it to the next P&G. But the first meeting, the person to convene to talk to the team was process. And I said, oh my God, it's not gonna fly. So the bottom line is it didn't work out with that person. I think the main reason was more cultural fit. But it was a very painful experience because it was a waste of time, waste of money, waste of goodwill from all the team that I tried to persuade that was a good hire, And from my perspective, I really learned in a hard way that sometimes the attitude and the motivation of the person is much more important than his experience and his CV. And hiring from bigger companies not always better. It's better to prioritize people that come from a background that can benefit your company's culture than hiring someone that from big companies that you admire. But conversely, I think when we make the right hire, it really changed the game of the company, because I think it's around year 3 or 4 when we launched into our first international countries in France, and then we launched into Italy. And that was the time the org chart, the organization was not very, clear. So I had a lot of people reporting to me at some point, maybe 15 or 20 people, and it's really a mess. And that's when we hired Philippe, who stepped in as a COO, and now he's the CEO now because he's a real pro of management. He really come in and organize the company and put in structure and reporting. I think without this this kind of hire, we would not have been able to scale the company the way we have scaled. So the wrong hire, to make the right hire, I think is how I define the different growth phase of the business. And you really grow by hiring better people than you are to grow the business.
Is that a difficult conversation to have with your co-founders, though, to say, I think we need to hire more experienced people to bring to the business? Is that difficult? Is there a slight ego damage potentially done there, or? It's
hard because in some cases, some of the co-founders would have to report to, to some external hires, and that's very hard to think because we all get together to think we start a company because we want to be our own boss, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point, somebody else becomes your boss, so that's a very hard to have conversation, and also as human ego goes, it's always harder to it's always easier to go up than go down. So but I think ultimately if you make the right hire and those people can demonstrate they can bring something on the table, the rationale in the long term always wins. Yeah. Although on the short term there's some emotional adjustment, but I guess it's also a matter of grow or die. If you don't hire those people, you cannot grow, and you don't grow, you don't exist. So it was a necessity really at the time. I've got loads of questions to ask you on talent and people, particularly around typology. I'm just thinking about if we go back to those early days, just because we've got so many early stage founders on the call, Ning, before you brought Philippe on as a CEO, in those early days, how did you split your time? What were your main priorities? And I guess the second part of the question is that what you wanted to prioritize on? And do you look back and think, oh, I should have spent more time on this, or have you learned from that? So I remember there was a time, I think, and also it's interesting to compare when, 10 years ago when I was starting May.com and now. I think at the time I really didn't have a very good time management system. I would just work all day long. And as you know, Julian was my flatmate, my co-founder was my flatmate, and he was sleeping on my couch for 3 years. So basically it was 24 hours work. So there's not really necessity to prioritize because we just had so much time. But at some point, I think I took a coach. I took a coach that was, I thought I had to learn something. I did not go into a big company. I didn't have the management training. So I took a coach for a year, and I learned quite a few good tricks from her. One thing that she taught me was, for example, if you have so many priorities, it's one good way to prioritize was, as a CEO, let's say you have to worry about products, marketing, let's say hiring and finance. You can divide your 5 days a week by 1 day I'm going to focus in products. So I will try to put all my product meetings on that, like, let's say Monday, and Tuesday more on marketing, and Wednesday more finance, and it kind of structure your week in a way. But that's the idea. In reality, it has always been a bit of firefighting in the first couple of years, and that's totally normal. Yeah. And on that firefighting point, I think it would be, I think that people would be disappointed if I didn't ask, were there any times when you just thought, I just don't know if this is going to work? I don't know. How did you get through that? Yeah, I mean, it's totally normal because business goes up and down, right? I think even today for typology, sudden times we think we're going to conquer the world, and the day after we thought, we're not going to live through this year. So it's a lot of I'm sure a lot of founders here would empathize. It's a roller coaster of an emotional journey. How to go through it, I think. We hired this guy David. He's I think you like him, the French country manager, right? He's a sailor, and he used to tell me that when in a storm in a boat, when it really goes up and down, you have to look at the horizon, That's when things are stable. You have to look very far away. And I think it's a sailor's saying. And that I remember very well. So when in difficult times, you just look very far away because that doesn't change.
No matter how much you're rocking.
Exactly. When it's rocking, you have to look far away.
No matter how. So if you're gonna, I think there's probably gonna be lots of questions on Made. So but this will probably be my last one on Made. But if you were gonna distill the success of that brand down to one thing, you know, what would you say? I mean, was it the brand? Was it the product? Was it, you know, what was it?
I mean, brand and product is such, you know, closely related thing because one substantiate the other. So it's very hard to differentiate them. But you know, today the trendy word is DNVB, right? It's a digital native vertically integrated brand. I can barely pronounce it, but at the time the word doesn't exist. But we have always known that the brand is something you should always fight for, because that's the ultimate equity that people are paying for, and it's what justifies a premium versus a generic product. But the way you build a brand is through delivering consistency of a quality product, right? Both in the touch point and product. And I think the good thing about a founder-led business is that often you're able to make some decisions that prioritize a brand versus something, you know, that would be just a short-term revenue, right? It's easy for me to say today that we should not do a promotion because we may lose some sales in the short term, but it protects the brand better in the long term. In the case of Made.com in particular, I think the brand stands for design and value, and those are the two attributes that we fight for, you know, and we invested really over again and again, right? So in design, as you know, we have a big team of over 100 people working on product development, designers, engineers, you know, quality control teams, really working on this, you know, making the best design that are industrially producible and at an affordable price. On the value front, you know, that's embedded in our business model. The fact that we don't have, you know, agent and middlemen, and the fact that we don't have big retail parks that we have to pay for, we cut down the price. And I think those two pillars are really the two areas that we have invested in a, you know, in a repetitive manner over 10 years time, and we have become quite good, you know, at the end of the 10 years time on those two attributes. And I think eventually customer recognize you for it.
And moving on to typology, I think brand and product are again at the absolute core of that, aren't they? I think, you know, so let's just talk about typology for a second. You know, you do not come from a background in the beauty industry, as we've heard. But we've probably got a lot of founders on this call who are maybe building a business in an area that potentially they're not that established. So how did you build credibility in a completely new area in beauty?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say, it's totally okay to build something in an area that you don't know that well. I think before I really, you know, started Made.com, I knew really nothing about furniture either, right? It's often as an outsider, I think you have a sort of ignorance that's both an asset and a liability. It's an asset because you are not afraid of making changes to rule of the game. And as a liability, of course, you can make a lot of mistakes that the insider would not make. But often you see industries disrupted by outsiders. And I think the question of legitimacy, it's often overrated, I would say, because legitimacy towards whom, right? From the consumer perspective, I think they are, when they see a really good product with good images, good review, they will recognize it for it. And from the industry point of view, it's much more your brand and what you do that defines you than, you know, where you come from. That's how I see things. But, you know, maybe in the B2B industry, it could be a little bit different, but at least in the B2C space, that's how we think. So, but the story is, when I stepped down from Made and I moved back to Paris, as you know, I had a bit of free time, and we had with my wife, we were fortunate enough to have a little girl who turns now 3. And as you know, Amy, I've been always a bit of a control freak. So I've always put a lot of details into what I do. And when it comes to buying the first bottle of cream for my girl, I went nuts. I did so many research on whether this cream is good versus the other cream. And when you turn the cream, flip the bottle backward and you started reading the ingredients, I got really worried about those names, so long and so complicated that I can't even pronounce, those ingredient names. So I did my research and I really found that there are a lot of people that are just like me that started asking questions on the ingredient and, whether they are good for your skin or not good for your skin, whether they can create some long-term health concern, whether they can create some hormonal imbalances. There are so many things that people just don't know. And when you put a cosmetic product into the market, the requirement, which is in Europe, which is the most strict in the world, is that you have to do patch tests on people for like 7 to 14 days, very short-term studies. But often when you apply a cream, some people can use one type of cream for their entire life. And the accumulation of certain ingredient in your body often has really unknown consequences. Nobody knows. That's the reality. And so I'm very skeptical of all those things, especially with a very long name. And I realized a lot of people just like me that really want to know the ingredients, their provenance, their benefits, whether it's safe or not for their body. And so I thought maybe there's a space to create a new brand that has the highest bar of integrity on formulation of the ingredients, not only the higher quality effective ingredient, but also the safest. And internet just happens to be the perfect medium for that, because online you have really the space to explain whether the ingredient is good for you or not. And that's how we started Typology, which was launched just about 2 years ago.
Yeah. But how do you go about hiring a team of experienced people within the beauty industry? I mean, is that where the brand's mission and vision comes in?
Yeah, I think the first thing, this time around, I think unlike the beginning of May, I had some free time, so I really had time to really put the brand mission and the values that really in order. Whereas when we started May, was just we just do these things on the go. So this time, the first thing I did is I really wrote down the brand mission and the vision that we want to build. And we used that as an argument to attract talents. And the second thing also that we wrote down very early on in the phase of the business, and that I recognize to a lot of people, is that we want also write down the values of the people we want to work with. So when I look back, in the years I've made and different kind of experience, there are people that I work better with, and there are people that I work less well with. So I try to kind of really drill down to the character of people that I work best with, and that I wrote down, in an articulated way, and use it as a recruitment tool. For example, I really like to work with people that are down to earth and that are doers, people that really, don't spend time doing hundreds of slides of strategy, but rather, find a problem and try to solve it. And that we really prioritize that in our recruitment process. And I don't think it's right or wrong that you do the strategy slides, but I know that for me, it works better, if we hire people that can be result-driven and be pragmatic rather than being, doing a lot of slides. So we have what we want to look for, and then we have to look for the candidates, which is really hard in the beginning when the brand does not exist. Yeah. But I think LinkedIn is a great space to start with. I got a premium account on LinkedIn, and you can spam as many people as you want. So I think I just reached out to hundreds of people on LinkedIn that work for cosmetic industry in the beginning to compensate my lack of knowledge and a lot of people refused to meet. Some people tried, accepted to meet, but but ended up, I think, getting, securing maybe 100 to 150 interviews. And with those 100 to 50 interviews, I've hired 2 people in the beginning to join the product development team to build the first assortment of typology products.
Okay, I've got lots of questions about product, but just on the team, I mean, how are you structuring the team differently? Is there anything that you've learned from, the days of e-commerce brand 10 years ago? And I read somewhere that and I heard from you that you've taken some inspiration from Supercell. I don't know if that's still the case, but what can a French beauty brand learn from a Finnish games company?
Yeah, so I think one frustration that I had, in a way, in looking through some of my internship experience in some bigger companies, and also to a certain extent at Made when the company grows, because we are now 600 people, was that the more people you hire, the slower you get. It's a very strange problem, it's not rational, it's not logical, because supposedly you have more people, you should go faster, but it's often the opposite. And then I realized, that a lot of time when you hire people, you create also some sort of overhead. When you hire people, you have to hire people to manage them. And then when you hire people to manage them, you also create a communication issue, because between you, when you have a message, you have to go through those, layer of management. That typology, I thought I have the opportunity to start something new. I would like to experiment at least something that's different. So we inspired from we took inspiration from Supercell structure, which is very lean but very circle-based, management, rather than hierarchical like a pyramid. We try to organize people into what we call chapters. A chapter is a team between, it's a cross-functional team between the minimum 3, the maximum can be 10, between a project leader, a designer, and an engineer or technical person. So you always have those 3 functions together, so they can they can progress in independence compared to the others, right? So in order to progress, you don't have to over communicate with all the rest of the team, but it's a matter of just 3 to 10 people getting together and decide on what they should do as their priority and how they go about to do it. So that's something we have done, and which we are still learning, because it's really early phase of the experience. But that seemed to work well, because it gave people a lot of empowerment. It's no longer Ning deciding what product they should launch. It's they can decide what product to launch, right? As long as we have aligned well on the brand and what kind of product we should be building, both from digital products, but also physical products. And people can advance in progress in full autonomy, and they decide that, we use this OKR system, which I recognize, to recommend to everyone. They decide their own OKR, and they report to themselves in a way. So this is also in a way we think that the day we become a 200 people or 500 people or 1,000 people team, how we can keep the structure as lean and as agile as possible.
Interesting. And you mentioned there about OKRs. I know at Founders Factory we love our OKRs. We have our big Monday all hands meeting. How do you, we have task forces on specific issues. Are there any, how are you getting the best from the team in terms of your internal comms? So how are you managing that? Particularly because are you all working together now? I'm guessing that you're still kind of.
Yeah, we are running about 20% in, so 1 to 2 days per week. Paris, I think the situation is bad, but probably London is worse. But so people can come to the office about 1 to 2 days a week if they decide to, and we have about 20% of people in the office. But that still means 80% remote. So communication has been a huge issue for about a year. So but I think we have found the right balance. What we have done is we used to have our all hands meeting once per month. We've moved it now to once per week. That I find is quite good in a remote working structure. So every Monday we will start, at 10 a.m. All hands meeting for 15 minutes, very short. So it doesn't take up much time. There's no preparation. And then after the all hand meetings, every chapter does their own planning, But I think the all hand meeting has served the purpose of both everyone can see on Zoom each other. I think that's just the face value, but also for people to hear from different chapters, you know, what's going on in different area and what are the key initiatives that we're carrying out. And then the other thing we do is really quarterly OKR, you know, which you have just mentioned. People have once per quarter, we spend really 2 weeks, very intensive, doing alignment and planning of what the priorities should be for the company, what should be the team, what should be the individual level. And after that, you know, people really run their own objectives and progress with their managers.
Brilliant. And just wanted to touch on about the product again there. In terms of the product strategy, this chapter structure sounds super interesting. But you know, what is informing your product strategy generally? Is it because it's a very crowded space? You know, how do you know which products you should be making and when? I'm talking about the physical products just for now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when I came into the cosmetic industry, I'm still very new. I mean, we're working on this for less than 3 years. So compared to the industry veteran that know what product sells, we have zero knowledge. So what we have decided initially was that because I have no idea what works, we're going to launch 100 products. And I think if I'm good, 10 products will work. If I'm really bad, at least one product should work. If no product works, we should close the company, you know? So we say we place 100 products and some of them, you know, would work. And that's what we did. So we didn't expect that we are better than, you know, L'Oreal and Unilever or P&G in detecting what product we sell. But by virtue of being more agile and quicker, we're able to launch products much more frequently and much more aggressively than some, you know, big, you know, deep pocket competitors. Mm. And once we find those best sellers, then we double down in those lines and to really grow into that direction. And D2C is a great channel for that because you get the information and feedback so quickly. The sales information, you know, from day one almost that, you know, what product can sell and which one cannot sell, but also on the continual improvement of quality, right? Sometimes, you know, the product you launch is not always perfect, but the feedback loop is so quick that, you know, in 2 to 3 months time, you have already changed your product twice sometimes. It's continual improvement that it's incredible when you compound that for 10 years, let's say.
I think that's really interesting that you talk about the feedback loop. And, you know, we see a lot of the D2C brands that we're building. It's not just enough to have a great product anymore. You've got to also create great content, but you've got to nurture a community as well. Is that something that you're finding with your customers? Is that you know, you're engaging with them more and more, and how are you making the most of that?
Yeah, I think pick your battle. I think that's what I would always think, because there are so many things you should worry about for when you start a business. As you say, the products, you have to worry about your content, you have to worry about your customer service and communities. And of course, there are must-haves. If you don't have customer service, you should not sell to customers, right? That's something that's basic. But then again, you should really choose where you will be excelling compared to your competitors. In our case, we picked products, you know, the physical product as our differentiator. We want to build better quality product, most, you know, concentrated, the most efficient, the safest products on the planet. And that's what we invest all the money and resource and our internal time talking about and doing. And in a way, all the other things that you have mentioned here took a secondary stage, because we, as a small team, we can, if one area we're good, it's really excellent. We can't be good in everything, right?
Okay. Ning, when I mentioned to people that I was talking to today, there were so many that just wanted to know about acquisition. There's so many marketers on this call. Yeah. I know that's something that that's been incredibly, you know, important for you. So talk us through your acquisition strategy. I'm sure that's very different for a £15 face cream to a £1,500 sofa.
Yes, yeah. I think, I mean, it's really hard, this question. And also, I guess there's quite a few insights to share. For a company like Made, it's been really built on acquisition. Okay, so we spent this year around, you know, anything between 60 to 80 million pounds on acquisition. It's huge, right? It's a massive. The company is built on aggressive acquisition marketing spend. But in the case of Typology, I think maybe it's such an intimate product, right? Skincare. It's not something that you would try easily, despite very heavy marketing. And we find that the growth, only 20% of the growth are accounted for from paid customers. So paid for, like, acquisition customers. So 80% of the customers come through organic and word of mouth channels, and press, of course. So a combination of a lot of word of mouth and in other words, our growth engine is not necessarily paid marketing, but it's more the product. So when we focus on doing really good products, our customers carry the good words with their friends, and that kind of in return grow the brand, and which is very different from the playbook of for Made.com. The good thing about a growth that's much more organic and word of mouth oriented is that obviously costs much less. But the bad thing is that you don't control really your growth trajectory, because you can't say this month I want to double my revenue. You can't. It's the organic channel for that. So, but still, it doesn't mean that the paid marketing doesn't play a role. It still plays for 20% of the growth. And for that, we've tried a couple of channels. We tried, obviously Facebook, and Instagram marketing. We spend money on Google, and we even tried some with a lot of disappointment influencer marketing.
I was going to ask you about that actually, where you sit on that and if you tested it.
Yes, we tested it, but I just find it so expensive, and it's really hard to make it work at the moment. So there's no one channel that we actually can think really can be the channel for growing Typology tomorrow. It's much better for us to focus on the branding experience and product that can be viral than the other way around. Still, within the channels, so what we have adopted as a strategy is that we think we should split in different channels. At least we're not dependent on one of the channels, on Facebook or Google or influencers. So we have a, kind of hedge the bet strategy for those channels.
Okay, and just thinking about other channels offline, it's a very interesting time for retail in the UK at the moment. ASOS has just purchased Topshop. Boohoo snapped up Debenhams, but not the physical stores, Ning. And I know at Made.com you successfully trialed a showrooming strategy. Could you talk us through a little bit about that and what that meant, but also for Typology, obviously we're in a pandemic, but where's your head at in terms of an offline presence?
I think, well, never say never, but first of all, if you look at the sales of Made.com this year, and basically retail was zero because there's no footprint. Well, there are some, but it's much more negligible than before, and sales have never been so good. So you can question to a certain extent the role of physical retail tomorrow for the future. And of course, we are very biased because we are in the D2C space. But I think my decision process is more towards what we can do well, because there are companies that actually huge, P&G and L'Oreal, that built their leadership over physical presence. But is that the channel that I think I can outperform them, right? Is that something I can do better than them? If it is, then let's do it. But if it is not, and it's just a matter of saying we are omni-channel, we have a shop, then there's no point. My belief is that we should really focus our limited effort in one area that we can be best in class and we can be better than anyone else, and compound our effort in that only single channel. And in the case of Typology, we really think digital is our differentiating factor. And digital can do it very simply, and you can do it, with a lot of sophistication, and that's what we choose to do. And I think that we are much better off being the best in class in the digital channel than being okay in each, a lot of those different channels.
Yeah. And on your site, you have a wonderful diagnostics test. So you can put in, if anyone hasn't tried it, definitely have a play with it. You put in your skin type and it will provide you with a list of recommended products. Are you looking at these sorts of digital products now to enhance the what would have been an offline experience as well. Is that something that you're keen on?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that we're developing behind the scene that we could, we hope can enhance the just traditional online purchase experience. One of the things that we have done is the diagnostics, because it's very hard to know actually what the products are good for you. And typically when you're buying a skincare product, the efficacy often comes down to finding the right product for your type of skin. And there are not just 4 types of skin as we commonly thought. There are actually much more nuanced than that. So with the diagnostic that we have developed with the pharmacist here in France, we have identified 24 types of skins. And going through those questions can really identify very specifically each individual needs and cater the products towards those needs. So people that go through those personalized routine tend to have a much more, higher net promoter score and higher, because they work better simply for them, right? And those are some of the very easy and simple tricks that actually carry out very good results. And there are so many other things that we're still in the process of developing that we hope to carry out very soon to enhance the experience.
That's a lovely data set from that diagnostics tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, 24 types of skins.
Yeah. I've got loads of other questions, but I'm going to ask some from the floor now, because otherwise we'll be here all day. One interesting one from Tim. So Tim is in our growth team at Founders Factory. He says, "Hi Ning, Juru, is that how I pronounce that right, Tim? Of Hero Cosmetics once tweeted something along the lines of, 'We're so profitable because D2C is our smaller channel.' What do you think about that?"
Yeah, I love this question. I just talked to Drew actually last week, so we have someone I know. But I think then again, I mean, they have a very successful business. But then, how do we say in English? Every road goes to Rome, right? There are different ways to go about it. Hero Cosmetics has I would say, a more traditional distributed channel. They sell their products on Amazon, but also mostly through Target and other retail outlets. They've been doing a very good business of that, and we are on the D2C, so we have chosen our battle. So we have very different strategy. Often you will find that people that are good in distributing products, not very good at D2C, and conversely, people that are very good at D2C, we have no idea how to do distribution. So I find where Hero Cosmetics find it not very profitable, it's because their products are already everywhere. They're on Amazon, they're on Target. Why would you go to the website to buy it, right? They can, in our sense, our product are exclusive to Typology. So, the only way when people want to purchase Typology product is to go to Typology. And also I think it's a matter of focus. When 80% of your business is with Target, then you inevitably will, get up in the morning and think about how I can do more business with Target rather than building your website. It's just a matter of focus.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a question here from Nick Torday. Nick is from a wonderful startup you need to check out, Ning, called Bauer Collective. I'll send you the link afterwards. They sell really beautiful, sustainable household cleaning products, essentially, and personal care products in refillable packaging. Have I got that right? He said, you mentioned discounting in the interview. What are your thoughts on discounting as part of an overall acquisition strategy? When is it appropriate, and when can it compromise your brand?
Okay, very good question too. I think first it depends on what kind of brand you are building. If you're building an aspirational brand, discount is bad for the brand. I would, at least if you have to do it, then that's what you have to do. But it's bad for aspirational brand. But on the other hand, if you're doing a discount brand, then discounting is what you do. So first you have to decide what kind of brand you are building. But the second thing actually I would bring to the table is discounting is often used in a retail environment when the wholesalers and different layer of the structure of the industry is involved. So traditionally, a brand sell to a retailer, then who sells to the consumer, right? So let's say L'Oreal sell to Sephora, Sephora sell to their consumers, but then Sephora has an incentive to discount L'Oreal's products because it's not Sephora's brand. But discounting L'Oreal product will give Sephora an edge compared to, let's say, another retailer that also sell L'Oreal products. So there's some kind of inherent discount incentive embedded into the middleman industry. But in the D2C world, discount is very different. You don't have to do discounting. The product you sell is usually only on your website. So you don't have to persuade people to come more to you than to another. And often there are various econometric studies that prove that discounting, although it boosts your revenue for the short term, what it only merely does is by anticipating some of the sale that would happen in the future today. So often when the discounting ends, you often have some kind of overhang of the product. So that's my short answer. So for the case of Typology, we never do discount. But for a company that's made that stands for value, we totally discount, because value is what we are trying to deliver to the customers. So I think it comes down to the very question of what kind of brand you are trying to build.
Is there a consumer expectation though, Ning, associated with that as well? Because I know Black Friday was always something at Made.com that we would sort of pull our hair out with it a little bit, because we didn't necessarily believe in the markups in the first place. Is there a consumer expectation?
Yeah, I think if you ask consumer what they want always cheaper price, and they're right to ask that. But and also it's true that in the Black Friday environment, everyone's discounting. So if you don't discount, then you lose out some of the sale. But I have, I think there also an element of, sometimes over consuming in a way in the case of Black Friday, because you're just doing so much discount to push the product, to move the product, that at the end of the day, people are buying, but you don't even know whether it's the right customer for you or not, because there are some type of customer that only look for discount. They will only come to you when you're discounting. And those are probably not the type of customer you want to build your brand with for the long term. And yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I don't have a definite answer for that. It just seems to me that in a D2C world, because it's such a new thing, we could afford to change the rule of the game a little bit, at least to try.
We've got a question here from someone that you definitely need to meet. This is Namshado, who has founded a wonderful new beauty brand called A Complexion. I'm putting it in the chat there so you can see, which is luxury organic beauty products for Black women, and launching very soon. Just joined our accelerator program. I think you can tell I'm excited. Namshado says, what part of your operations is internal versus external? What did you find as the optimal mix when ensuring the quality, speed, and newness at the early stage of Typology? Because not many brands can launch 100 products. There have been key learnings that what became core to move fast and lean whilst having a big SKU.
Yeah. So we have formulation and research development in-house, because often when you outsource that part, it's super costly. It's often something that can cost 20 to 40,000 pounds per product. But if you do it in-house, because we have a very aggressive R&D schedule, it could come down to much cheaper. It's just basically manpower that you're paying for. So we have our lab that we formulate our own products. But when we have the product ready, we outsource it to manufacturers based in France. So France is a wonderful place when it comes to cosmetic manufacturing, because you have the biggest ecosystem for manufacturing value chain in the world. So you can really find different type of factory for different kind of products. So R&D in-house, manufacturing external, and then the logistics too at this stage is outsourced, is contract warehousing. But at some point, it's something that we can, when you have the scale, we are looking to insource the same way we've done with Made.com. Initially, contract warehousing, and then we took it in-house. And I think the other question is what's the right mix between quality, speed, and newness? Well, speed and newness is quite a similar concept. If you are quick enough, you bring out newness enough. I think in the ideal world, you want both. You want quality and speed. And that's what I try to push my team to do. And I think when you have to trade off, you will always trade off speed for quality, because that's, you don't want to upset your customer by just churning out a good product too quickly, but it's not good enough. I think that's if you have to make I mean, that seems to be a good, really common sense.
Yeah, well, and it just made me think, you are uniquely placed to answer this question really on this call, and we've got so many D2C startup founders on the Zoom as well. So what is it, what are the key ingredients in 2021 that you need to create an online brand that people love? What are the absolute fundamentals, Ning? Well, that's a good question.
If I knew, well, I would think from my point of view, there's a lot of opportunities, and we are all young founders here, and maybe I would assume that we are often taking on big guys here. And I think one way to look at things is to say what we can do that the big guys cannot do, right? In our case of Typology, we cannot outspend L'Oreal in marketing budget. All right, we cannot outspend P&G in marketing budget. Those are the biggest, marketing budget in the world. But we can do quicker than them, and that's one thing. We can be more agile. We can apply digital mindset into physical world to really bring that cultural agility into our advantage. And they are big, mammoth companies. They really move slowly. And the other thing that we can do that they can't is really on the element of principles and values. I think the consumers have evolved a lot. They're today looking for responsible brands. They're looking for products and companies that really care about the ecology, care about the planet. I think some of the big companies try to carry out those, some corporate responsibility programs, and try to greenwash the brands. But consumers are not silly. They see through that, right? They don't buy the bullshit of the bigger companies. What are they trying to do? And as a new brand, as a small brand, I think if you create your company based on those beliefs and values, you will come across much stronger in those new consumers' mind, at least on the values. And that's something that the big companies cannot do, right? When you buy Garnier or L'Oreal products, you know that they don't stand for planet-friendly products. Right, but you could. I think that's a huge opportunity from this perspective, that you can outperform your establishment players. I think that's what we should try to play in for our strength.
I love it. And the last question, Ning, and Gerard just touched on it. Gerard's in our data science team on the chat, and he mentioned, first of all, it was cutting out the middleman with furniture. Now it's beauty. What's next?
So it's a good question. I think when I built Typology, so we started actually a company called Good Brands. And the idea is that I would love to innovate. I know that as an entrepreneur, I like to, I would have the urge at some point to do new things, but I can create a lot of things within the umbrella of Good Brands. So we would like to create a umbrella of D2C brands that actually carry the good ethos of, and also try to all share the same values of trying to do things a little bit better for the consumer world. And that today can apply to cosmetics, and tomorrow can apply to maybe some medical products, to some hygiene products, to see some maybe some a lot of products that you can see in a big CPG company portfolio.
Ning, thanks so much for giving up your lunch break and chatting to us today. That was fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining, for all your questions. Ning, I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Amy. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, guys.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.